case, I would like to invite here Didier Torny, who is introducing a talk entitled Discovering and Charting the Black Matter of Citations, Matilda as a New Source for Open Citations.
It's okay, it's okay. Who's managing the time? You do, okay, I look at you. Perfect, thank you. Just trying, yes, it works. Hello to all. I will spend 5% of my time to thank the organizers for these wonderful 2 days first, and then explain that I'm here with different hats. I'm both a researcher at CNRS, senior researcher, trained in sociology and STS, but also as an infrastructure scientific director. So as a researcher, I'm currently working in an international project about the effect of open data on research evaluation based on qualitative interviews and things. So some of you who are data providers, infrastructure providers, will see us as we meet about this project and wish to have some input from you, but also, of course, universities. So here, I'm talking about this thing. I will explain a little bit, but what is the important part, of course, it's what we've been building from Matilda to Open Citation. So first thing, another homage to David Shorten, without which probably none of us would be here right now, because he had this very strange idea back in the day to say, okay, we are going to free citations. Because the main idea was that the citation data, reference data, whatever you call it, was already there, but it was captured, it was kept, it was proprietary, it was not available as open data. And of course, the story was long with many other partners beyond what is started to build as open citation. And in the end, you got cocky and you got other stuff that went on. And so we went from a nice idea to a small corpus to a very large infrastructure from my point of view. But then there's a problem with this approach, of course. The problem is it's as open as available. And to say it otherwise, as close as publishers wish. And thanks to Ludo's presentation yesterday, of course you could change by as publishers can, depending on the type of publisher that you have. And we have a very good example of that, thanks to Bianca. As you know, in OpenAlex, the Springer abstract disappeared, and then the Elsevier abstracts disappear. So they still have, in a sense, some control, and openness is reversible. And you say, oh, no, because it's CC0. Yes, but if nobody's archiving right now, maybe 2 years it wouldn't exist, or it's not CC0 anymore. So the question is, how do we solve this problem of dependency from the producers, either because they don't have the resources or because they're not wishing to share all these things? So we make a detour by Matilda. What is Matilda? Very simple. In 4 words, it's an open data Google Scholar, which aims technically at replacing Google Scholar, which we either go down because Google will pull the plug, or because it will be completely contaminated by bad AI and fake text being pushed by people who are actually being working for people evaluated through Google Scholar, number of citation, H-index, or whatever. So this is very important. This is a bibliographical tool and not a bibliometric tool. What does it mean? Basically, it's made to read and not to count. If you want to count, maybe one day you can use it, but now it's made for users that want actually to have access to text and being able to read them because potentially it interests them. It has services like big text export, RSS alerts, citation tracking, and other stuff. And of course, it's in production. You can go on the website. Very important, there's no identification, no user tracking. So we know how many users we have, but we don't know anything about them. And we will keep it that way, which is very important for us, especially in a time where surveillance publishing has not only become a concept, but a reality for many of us. And finally, that's made from the beginning as a sober and robust platform, which is a way to answer to this morning's keynote. So it has cost it, I shall check it out, because now it's 290K as a direct cost, and that's it. So you go online, you see it, and then you think it's less than 300K cost. So that means if we have more money, we're going to finish it probably for less than 1 million, and it's going to replace completely Google Scholar. At least I pretend to, as a, whatever, scientific director. So to give just numbers, because it's for users that don't count, but I can count, of course, and I'll ask well. So 147 million works. We don't have the whole sources, especially Crossref. We have only around half of it based on the project dependency path. We have 12 million identified authors through ORCID. Around 2 billion references links, so that's less than you, but we'll talk about that. And we have 23 million full text search plus 2 million every month. This is key for us. We want to say that full text search should be the standard. This is not the 60s anymore. We don't have the limitations of metadata only. We don't have the limitations of the 80s, metadata plus abstracts. Wow, so cool. No, we need the full text search to be the standard. And something that is important is 147 million works deduplicated. We have the same kind of strategies of deduplicating and keeping all the sources. That means this metadata comes, in fact, from archive, and that one comes from Crossref. So every day, it's a production platform. Every day, it's being updated with all these kind of things. And you see the last one is important. So we got, of course, citation data from sources, but also we got citations data from full text ref links, and that's, I'm going to spend the last, 5 minutes on that. So we use Grobid for the moment, and I'm pretty happy to see all these posters and presentations. I want all your prototypes to go fully on productions. I need something that could work at least 100,000 PDFs a day. If you have that on shelf, I will use it, of course. So we have a chain where we get the PDF, of course, a legal one coming from the sources, coming from unpaywall and all the stuff. So the first thing we do, it's index full text for the full text search on Matilda. But we do two other things. One is we use it also to get back the title, the abstract, the authors. And of course, we got ranking operations. That means it won't change the title from, let's say, a Crossref source or an AL source or whatever. But if we don't have a title, which happens sometimes, or if we don't have the abstracts, which happen more often thanks to the poster on Crossref data, we know that now. And then there's a final operation, which is the references. So we take them from Grobid, and you have to think, it's always, the question is not to have everything. The question is to offer the maximum available trustful thing to our users, whose other solutions are either commercial, really high price things, or something that is not based on open data in which we can't shake. So what do we do with that? We made a chain. Okay, this is complicated because the norms in open citations are not the same. For example, for us, a reference, we mix, in a sense, the reference that maybe wasn't coming from the preprint and coming from Crossref and whatever. They want them to be apart. They want to have a certain format, which is not us, and so on. So we're building on that, and we have basically 3 CSV files that are available right now, and we made some tests, and I'll come to that later. So we have Matilda to also metadata, in which we have both the cited and the citing, and all the metadata that open citations wish to have to get into alignment with OSAME meta. We have the same thing for citations. This is the number of lines here. That is quite low compared to the next one because of our own limitation as a database, and because this is an ongoing process. That is something that has been extracted in September. Maybe we have new text of the past, and then we don't have them, we can't align them right now, because the full thing is this, the other citations, 185 millions, which is, of course, much more. It's based on document PIDs, DOI, archive ID, PM ID. Sorry if one of you has reviewed my proposal. I said DOI, I was meaning PID inside in the proposal. So we do that, And of course, there are validation systems within Open Citations, and we abide by them. There's no problem. I just said, trash everything that you think is not trustful, and it's fine, and keep the rest. And of course, the idea is to give only this data. That means we don't want to give back cross-ref data to Open Citation, which already has it. Okay, it's just the idea of discovery of new things. And that's my last slide. So we have this routine dump, so it's daily updated. It's part of a chain, so you get new things every day with around 900K new citations. What we're interested in, and we're waiting for the return of citation. Okay, how much do we add? We don't know for the moment for many different reasons. So we want to be sure that it's a process that is not only effective, but in fact that adds things and fulfill its purpose. I shall disclose that I'm at the board of Open Citations, which of course facilitate our discussions about the aims and how we do it and so on. And there should be an extension to datasets and software if we have the money from the European grant, because we're going to add not the datasets themselves, but the link inside the citations. Thanks again for the poster. I totally agree on how they are cited. So datasets and software being, let's say, referenced into a paper as supplementary data, as links and whatever. And we're going to have it because we know this is really important from the beginning. That is, Open Citation is interested in this reference link rather than the actual nature of the reference and the cited objects. Thank you.
Thank you, Didier. There is already questions there.
And I'm available at the coffee break to answer any questions on Matilda itself, of course.
One question. So you say, okay, we need to search for the whole text. But you said that you have more than 140 million publications to search.
Yes.
But you have the full text only for 20 million, about 20 million, I think.
Yes, for the moment, yes.
Yes, but it's very likely that you will not get more coverage anytime soon, because this relies to the access level to the paper itself,
no.
The publisher.
No, because the idea is within a French infrastructure which would begin in the autumn, for example, to see legally, and that seems to be okay, that the 28 million, for example, texts that have been bought back from the big publishers, there is TDM and other stuff inside. So that means we could actually text mine them, of course not giving access to anyone to the indexed full text, but put it into being searchable. So for example, beyond, let's say, the 50 millions or whatever that already exist, we could have these 28 millions. And of course, the idea is to add sources like core and base and so on in order to, get higher and higher. I'm not saying that it's going to reach 100%, but even Google Scholar is not reaching 100%. The idea is to think that as a standard. That is, if you don't have that, this is not the normal. Just like Open Citations and other movements have made things that were not existence or really exceptions the new standard. And if you don't have it, I would turn it around. If you're Elsevier and you say, I don't want my full text to be available, okay, guy, that's your problem. That means there would be less discovery for your articles.
But when you build this index, you will make it available? Is this dataset, this index, not the text?
No, because
available?
legally, probably we can't do it. Legally,
okay.
We can't do it. So every result, everything that is in Matilda, every data, and I'm saying data and not index, every data is still available on CC0. You can use, for example, RSS streams, share them everywhere. It's not traced, of course. But the index PDF, it's probably not shareable for many reasons, and it's certainly not shareable as a CC0 level. Because even if you have a text, a PDF that is CC BY, I mean, the index PDF should be CC BY, for example, and not CC0. So the index won't be shared to the general public and every user, but there's something that is scheduled, that is sharing it to research communities with, of course, contracts about how you could use it, and especially people in computer and AI domains.
Okay, but no other search engines for academic papers can take advantage of that index? No other academic search engines can take advantage of this index that you build, only Matilda, practically. Because you will not share the index, right?
I will not?
Share the index.
Oh, no, okay. The index will be shared by the level of a French platform with demands from researchers, basically, with a kind of agreement about how you use it and the fact that you can't redistribute them. But of course, they would share on that condition, but there's no way legally we can share that at a CC0 level. No way. Or when we want to share it, we want to be sure of everything. There's an exception, of course, that's the abstract, but I won't answer now because I won't have the time. You can find the answer on the website and I can talk about it.
Somebody passed me the mic, so I had to think of a question. Thank you for that. I wanted just to ask about the users and the adoption of Matilda, because we obviously talk and hear a lot about open citations, about open ALEX, and I wanted to just understand who's using Matilda as a discovery tool, and if one of the goals is to usurp Google Scholar, what does that trajectory look like?
Very good question. So I said we have a number of individual IPs that go. So we are around a very modest number for the number because no publicity for whatever. So we are around 1,200 different IPs a month. Okay, that's the number. And we want, of course, to analyze usage data because we think that right now we know almost nothing on how researchers especially do their bibliography. If you look at the literature, there's almost nothing. We have libraries on SEO and how people search the internet, try to find papers on how researchers actually do their bibliography. So basically we know nothing, which means we don't know the kind of service they need. So we want to use usage data and of course usage to get to users in order to have this. And of course we have to build a governance and so on. Remind of the price it has costed until now. And so this is really essential to us. What we see is that we have already queries in different languages, English mostly, of course, but also French, Arabic, Spanish. And we have clearly very complex queries with lots of Boolean things and stuff, but also we have very simple ones in which we suspect it's clearly non-academic users.
Okay. Thank you, Didier. Thank you. Next speaker is Iratxe Puebla, who is going to present a talk entitled Scaling Open Research Information for Scholarly Outputs, the Data Citation Corpus Advances, Evaluations of the Impact of Research Data.
Now, yeah, now it's green, good. Right, thank you so much, Silvio, and to the organizers for the opportunity to be here. I'm Iratxe Puebla, director of Make Data Count. I'm presenting on behalf of myself and Maria Gould from the DataCite team. And I'm particularly pleased to be here today because I gave another presentation about the data citation corpus at the last workshop in 2023. So actually I wanted to do a very quick show of hands of who was here at the last workshop. Oh, Silvio was here, yay! Okay, so a lot of new customers, well done to the organizers, but I'm sure there are going to be new information for both of you who may be perhaps a bit more new to the project, but also for those who are here. So as a brief introduction about Make Data Count, we're a community initiative that works to build the tools and practices needed so that the community can better understand how data sets are used and evaluate the reach and impact of data sets. What we want is to get to a place where data sets are routinely evaluated and also rewarded as primary outputs. To get there, we work on 3 key areas. The first one is to build open infrastructure to collect and share measures of data usage. The second is that we believe really in community collaboration to together create the standards that help us normalize those usage indicators, but also collaborate on building the evidence that help us understand, again, what are the practices, what information those indicators give us, but also what's missing to help us contextualize metrics. And the third is that, as I said, we want to get to the point where data sets are rewarded as primary output, so we believe that data needs to be incorporated in research evaluation, and we collaborate with efforts to, again, bring reform and change in research assessment. Make Data Count has been working for about 10 years in building workflows to collect information on data usage. A big part of that relates to citations to data sets, and we build workflows in collaboration with DataCite to allow collecting those citations to data sets through the metadata that is registered by both repositories and journals. And again, to bring that together, aggregate it, and share it with the community under open metadata through DataCite services. We believe those workflows have been very powerful, but we also know that they don't yet give us the full picture on the use of data. We are not yet capturing all of those relationships between data sets and other activities, other outputs. There are a number of reasons for this, and many of you I'm sure are familiar with. But one is that we know that the practices around data citation are very different across disciplines. They are not necessarily very common among some researchers, so it means that we don't get those citations as part of the bibliography in articles, for example, and even when that happens, sometimes those citations don't make it into the journal metadata that gets shared with Crossref. We also know that we've been focusing a lot in capturing usage for data sets that have DOIs, and that's valuable, but we also know that there are repositories that use different identifiers, for example, accession numbers, and that needs to be brought into that whole picture on data usage. And we also know that there are a number of groups interested in this. Many of those are here. So we know a lot of work is happening here, sometimes related to specific repositories or disciplines or institutions, but those citations live in different spaces, so we feel that it's important to bring that together and also to place that in open systems for community access. And this was the motivation of the Data Citation Corpus project. We've been working on building this large-scale open aggregate of citations to datasets. So the idea here is to say, rather than relying only on the existing metadata workflows, can we go broader and try to identify more of those data to article links that we know happen? Many articles are based on data, and try to surface more of those connections, of those relationships through different methodologies, some of them through technology that is emerging, some of that through, again, community or institutional efforts. So the idea for the corpus is to bring all of those relationships together into a single community open resource, bringing those citations through persistent identifier metadata, machine learning approaches that do full text mining of articles to identify data sets, as well as curation. And just as a clarification, we are currently using or setting the limits of the corpus as data set to article connections. We know that there are connections between data sets and other outputs and data sets, but we feel it was important to at least start from that place where we know data usage is happening and that we need to work on surfacing more of that activity. So in terms of where we are at present with the corpus, we've been sharing updates in the form of data files that you can access on Zenodo with different milestones in the project. We currently have the latest data file includes 3 data sources for citations, including the data citations coming from DataCite event data, again, the ones that come from repository and journal metadata. But also we have 2 additional sources. One includes data citations contributed by the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative that completed a project to apply a machine learning algorithm on a set of 5 million open access articles to, again, identify either accession numbers or DOI to data sets, and contributed that to the corpus. And the third source is that we collaborated with Aligning Science across Parkinson's. This is a fund that has very progressive open science policies. They do a lot of work with persistent identifiers for their outputs and the connections between their open outputs, and contributed that to the corpus as well. So currently there is over 5 million data citations representing over 1,700 repositories, and importantly, as I mentioned, this includes data sets both with accession numbers and DOIs. One aspect that is important in the design on the corpus is that we believe that we need to be transparent about the provenance of those relationships, because again, there are different views as to what's a citation and how to define it. And we recognize that we are taking a very broad view to try to bring a bigger picture into this, but that we need to be clear on the provenance of that asserted relationship between the data set and the article. So we will always show the source of that citation, and as part of the documentation for the corpus, we provide information again on what's the framework that we apply to define a citation according to the particular source. The other thing I wanted to mention briefly is that we've had a lot of interest from the community on the data citation corpus, and I wanted to show you a couple of examples of how it has been used, again, often in combination with other data sources to try to go deeper into gaining these insights on data usage. One of the examples of this use of the data citation corpus is the State of Open Data report. This is a report that features digital science and Springer Nature, share every year reporting trends in open data. And for the latest report at the end of 2024, they included actually quite an in-depth analysis of citations in the data citation corpus combined with the information that they have in their own data set database. So one of the examples is that they, apart from looking at temporal trends and country-based distribution, they also looked at the distribution of citations to data sets according to the relationship with the funder for the citing articles. So in, for example, things funded by NIH, Wellcome, etc., across a number of large funders. Another stakeholder that we believe is very important to bring into this is that we know institutions are very interested in understanding better what are the data outputs for that coming from the researchers. And one collaboration that we did this year was to work together with members of the library at Northwestern University and the University of Colorado Boulder to actually start looking into insights we could gain for specific universities. So what we did is evaluate citations from the data citation corpus, but also EuroPMC, which is the next source that we are going to be including, and then have a look as to how we could match that based on the affiliation for the citing articles. And we looked at the citations for, related to these two institutions in a couple of ways. One, we wanted to see what were the trends in terms of the repositories, the hosted data that was showing most use. This highlighted that in both cases the most used repositories were DBSMP, the Protein Data Bank, and the European Nucleotide Archive. I would say there is a big focus currently in the corpus for biomedical fields in terms of the set of articles that were used for text mining, for example. So I think that reflects that focus. The other thing that we did through this collaboration is that we also wanted to see what was the distribution in terms of data-intensive research areas. So again, for this, we used the corpus, data citation from EuroPMC, and the article subject classification using OpenAlex information, and this gave us an idea of what were the research areas that in each institution were showing a lot of data-intensive research. For Northwestern, more health science-related areas, and for the University of Colorado Boulder, more on the side of environmental sciences. And very briefly, just to finish, I wanted to mention a few things that we are working on and that we have in the horizon for the corpus. As I mentioned, we are working actively on adding more sources. The next one is we're including citations from EuroPMC, but we're also in conversation with groups working on different disciplines to incorporate their data citation. We really want to expand that disciplinary coverage as well as the number of citations. And something else that we are looking at is that we want to continue leveraging the machine learning algorithms, but we know there are improvements to do with that, and that this is a very fast-moving field. And we are working on essentially developing a new algorithm that will be open source, again, to try to scale those linkages. We are also working on addressing some areas where we know metadata needs quality improvement or enrichment, very interested in understanding better the context for citations, and also in facilitating ways in which others can retrieve citations from the corpus beyond the data file. But with that, this is just an invitation for all of you to please explore the corpus. We welcome feedback, we listen to it. We appreciate the areas where you think there are more improvements or particular priorities to pay focus on. And If you are developing citations yourself, we are very happy to have contributions. There is no contribution too small, so very happy to talk with you about it. And if you have also perspectives or feedback or evaluation needs around data, also very happy to hear from you and amplify your story. Thank you so much.
Rod Page, I was kind of curious, and this is also a question maybe for open citations as well. So we have on the one hand a project getting citations of data, and then we have open citations getting data on citations of bibliographic work. Is there any reason why we don't merge those two into one single project? I mean, you're both looking at citations, and obviously the people interested in citations are going to be the same. And just bearing in mind, we had Catherine Skinner's talk this morning about suggesting some projects should merge, maybe we have too many projects. Do you see enough overlap that you two could kind of merge in some useful way?
Sorry, I was cutting a bit for me. Do you mind repeating, Silvio? Sorry, I'm not sure I got the gist of the question.
I guess the gist is open citations exists with lots of citation data of papers. The Make Data Count project is tracking citations but of data. Is there any reason not to merge those two? So we have a single place to go to get citations of whatever we're interested in.
Yes, no, sorry, that's a very good question, so thank you. I guess the answer to this is that we are working on the corpus with the goal of incorporating citations to data sets that go beyond having a DOI, including accession numbers. So this is a project that is being worked on through DataCite anyway, but DataCite has a focus on DOI metadata. So we have been developing the database for the corpus slightly in parallel, but the goal is to really find ways to better combine that into ways that the community can access that, again, in parallel ways to the way that they would use DataCite metadata and citations, and I believe that Open Citations is already including DataCite metadata anyway. So the idea is that in the future, when those parallel lanes merge, it would immediately go into the current workflows with Open Citations.
If I may take your question, since you have involved directly also Open Citations in the questions, I have one specific perspective for what concerns open science infrastructures in general. I would avoid to think about having just one place to find everything you need, because in my opinion, the community as an open science infrastructure community works when we have even multiple complementary, in a way, even if with overlaps, somehow sources that you can engage with for getting the data. The point here is not, to me, to have just one single silos with everything, but is to have multiple specialized sources that are able to talk with each other. To me, the focus should be made on the interoperability across the sources and in the operationability across the sources. So communicating via standard APIs and these kind of things that we as a community should work on in the next years. It's not just to have the replacement for Scopus. We all together are the replacement of Scopus. That's the idea. Actually, we are even adding more value to that specific silo if we are collaborating instead of finding just a full one-to-one replacement, in my opinion. So we should work on interoperability more than on having one single point of failure, in a sense. My take, my personal view, by the way. Other questions for Iratxe? Yeah.
What does make data count to make data curation count?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I think what we're working on is in trying to scale really the number of these. Sorry, I cannot see you above the parapet. We are trying to scale the number of these relationships. It doesn't mean that we don't care about curation. We have been doing some work really including with the data citations contributed with CCI to address quality issues. I think that's probably something that we will need to continue iterating on. I believe in the power of the new tools, provided that we have guardrails and mechanisms to say when do they work well and when they need more of a human curation. But it doesn't, the corpus currently doesn't exclude curated data citations. In fact, we're working with groups as well that do a lot of manual work to say we have asserted this relationship. So it's not incompatible. We just want to work with the community on making sure that we find the right mixture.
Okay. I think we can thank Iratxe again. Thank you. For the next talk is Andrea Mannocci, who is going to introduce a work entitled Advancing Integration and Reuse Across Diverse Scholarly Data Sources. That was by chance, I didn't, okay. Scholarly data sources. Yeah, exactly. Introducing the SKG-IF, the interoperability framework for scientific knowledge graph.
Does it work? Green is good. Okay, so as I was saying, Silvio handed over perfectly. It was totally unintentional, but his speech, it's a perfect introduction to this talk. SKG-IF, it's a working group that has been developed under the Research Data Alliance umbrella. I've been co-chairing these roller coasters since June 2023. We were intended to initially wrap up at the end of last year, but we had an extension till the end of June this year in order to implement API specifications. So this slide pretty much has been left unchanged since the beginning, and when we started we had this high fragmented plethora of different initiatives that are concurring in the same domain, and we have seen that, like, it's usually the refrain is we are there, we model this aspect of the scholarly information, tackling a specific use case in mind, we get other stuff from other people, we ingest it in our local model, we do things, and then we export everything to someone else which is interested in what we're doing, and all these translates into point-to-point mappings, right? Understanding other people model, coming to compromise, coming to terms with different technologies and implementative choices, and it's time consuming, and it's a super heavy workload to maintain. The more collaborations we establish, the more time we end up doing the same job day in, day out. So pretty much as here that we are talking in English and we all understand the same language, and it escapes us from this bubble tower kind of analogy, we were thinking to have a standardized lingua franca that could basically slide an interoperability layer in every single scholarly knowledge graph. Here in this community, the scholarly knowledge graph is the jargon term that won over time, but you can think about bibliographic database, that would work. I mean, you can just replace the term, that would work perfectly the same. And so the idea is to have this kind of layer that translates, and in a way, in a format that is understandable to all the others with no any due action due further. And so it's essentially a set of guidelines. There is nothing magic. There's no centralized point of implementation that does the translation for you. There is a website. We are a GitHub organization with a bunch of different repositories, and you can follow us on RDA if you want to contribute or participate to our periodic meetings. I mean, we are wrapping up, but we won't disappear. We will move into maintenance mode, so we will stick around, I think, for quite a while. So the method that we adopted from the beginning was try to reuse as much as possible what was already present in the literature and state of the art without reinventing the wheel necessarily. Since the beginning, we onboarded and engaged with a major SKG provider. DataCite, Crossref, OpenAir was an easy one because I work with Paolo Manghi and we are in the same office. I work around OpenAir, Open Citation with Silvio, OpenAlex we have Kyle Deems as a co-chair. It's a bit hard to, I mean, we transitioned from Jason Portnoy to him. It has been quite hard to, mostly for time zones, to catch up, but it has been there. We had Eurocris, Ian Vorak in our meetings early on, and we performed the landscape analysis trying to understand different locally adopted data models, and we have in mind that in the best scenario possible, things should be described in a very thorough and extensive way, but we had to go through pragmatic choices in order to include entities and properties that should be modeled, because otherwise you just end up modeling things that are never present out there, and that's not something that's really handy at the end of the day in terms of interoperability. And so in a nutshell, the whole architecture could be summarized like this. So we do have a foundational layer, which is about the data model, the SKG-IF ontology, which has been developed with semantic web technologies. So this is all full-fledged RDF kind of thing. I won't delve into details in this aspect, because otherwise it will be too much. But what I want you to understand is that there is a semantic, solid, formal definition of our model domain, and on top of that we have three components: the interoperability framework, the JSON, LD context, and the shackle, which are sitting on top and basically are piloting and enforcing the format and semantic alignment and constraints that the objects flying through the wire as interoperability objects and exchanged by different parties should conform to. On top of that, there's an API specification, and flanking everything, there's an extension mechanism that enables people that have different requirements from the one we started with to model aspects, entities, properties that were not initially captured by our work. And this has been, I mean, I will make that clear in a while. There are 6 core entities: research products, not only literature, but also software data and other research product, agents that can be either persons, organizations, or generic agents that are involved in the creation, production of research products, data sources and venues. Data sources are the endpoints that the services or platform that host the metadata, descriptive metadata about research products, and venues is intended as to be the publishing gateway, which possibly can be distinct from data sources. Grant and topic for modeling disciplines and research fields, keywords, any kind of context, disciplinary context, and grants for tracking money, mostly. And so the core model has JSON LD as a format of reference, and we followed field-by-field documentation online. So for example, here is the duration of a grant. It has a start and end. It provides cardinality and whether the field is mandatory or optional, the format it should comply to, and so on and so forth. Then the other bit I was mentioning in the beginning is the JSON LD context. So it imports all the ontologies that are being pulled, and here you can see a lot of SPAR ontologies, core, and other well-established schema.org and other well-established control vocabularies and ontologies in semantic web. And then the JSON LD context for every property, so for every term in the JSON, in the JSON format, in the JSON model that we have, it describes the ontology it should comply to, so to provide ontological alignment and unambiguous meaning to every term. Then we have a shackle file that completes everything with conformity checks and mostly ontological alignment in terms of domain and range of properties and relations, cardinality checks, and control vocabularies. This is an addendum to do in the future, but it's something that it is to be tackled by the shackle file. Then APIs. In the first iteration, we had just like very simple resolvers that were meant to provide an SKG-IF representation of an object. But now we are transitioning to open API specification. So we do provide on our website a YAML file that describes the endpoints, the input and output of the objects flying on the wire, and the operations are allowed. Now it's in alpha. It's going to be finalized by the end of June. And it's an API-first approach, so there's no implementation again. It's just the contract that anybody that's willing to implement the APIs should comply to. We have a commitment from OpenAir and Open Citation to implement the specs, and DataCite, they started to discuss that. So, I mean, they will come back when things get more stable. Then we have extensions. Basically, it's about capturing community-driven concepts. So SKG-IF has been put inside the proposals of 3 different projects, and now there's a Graphia and Lumen joining the party. And we want to have everything I described to be extendable for other third parties. There are 2 principles that should be followed. Shared interest, so there should be a community, not an individual need to be tackled, and non-interference, meaning that the core part of this SKG-IF shouldn't be disrupted. And extensions can essentially extend, add new properties, or introduce new entities. New properties, for example, corresponding author email is not modeled. It could be a new property viable to be added. New entities, reviews, they are not there. Peer reviews are not there. It's a kind of entity that could be added. And the other thing that extension can do is about core API extension, so new behaviors, new endpoints, new filtering, so on and so forth. We have a centralized governance structure. We prefer that from pull request to have to engage with the working group and go through a formal approval, and there's a dedicated repository that goes into continuous integration, continuous development workflow with a mini website in the same look and feel of the main website, which is hidden, and then at the end, after everything gets endorsed and is well documented, it shows up, and the working group can cherry pick after the endorsement and after the extension gets momentum to engulf the proposition that have been made locally to the extension into the core data model. So, last slide, we are finalizing the documentation to comply with the deadlines. I am trying to finalize an extension sandbox in order to document better the whole extension process. We are thinking to apply to submit a paper to the special issue in Centrometrics, which is at the end of the year. And then we do have the first extension coming through, which is about research assessment, adding indicators onto our core model, which were not initially captured, and this has been included in the Open Infrastructure for RRA working group specifications. I mean, in this document, there is an explicit mention to the work here as a viable standard to enable interoperability. And yeah, the other 2 projects are contributing massively to the APIs and testing the core model. That would be all. Sorry if I got a bit longer than expected, but it's a lot of things. Thank you.
Questions for Andrea from the audience?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I am just anticipating something that my colleague Alessandro will present, because for GoTriple, we are going to implement an alignment with SKG-IF. But one of the things that actually we were asking ourselves was actually how to put in practice the exchange of data. So if I understood correctly, the APIs that you are going to specify are something that each data source must implement, right? Okay, so that's interesting. The second question is, are you thinking about having a sort of registry of all the data sources that are implementing a sort of...
Great point. That was in the initial proposal. We were thinking to have a registry where basically we could maintain a directory with all the manifests of different SKGs. And I think unwillingly, this kind of thing like flew out of the window at some point because we were overwhelmed by the rest. It doesn't mean that it totally makes sense to have that. We were thinking to make comparisons across different SKGs according to different axes, and this is actually where everything started. Like in 2020. We published the first position paper exactly about interoperability, but in terms of how do you compare different initiatives that are doing the same business. Like how do you, we were trying to come up with a comparison framework, and it would be nice to resume that work, revamp it, and try and fit it better here. So once we have, I think that it would make sense once we have more than 2 adopters to have a comparison among them in order to understand which are the possibly locally added values and all the specificity. Great. +1.
Any other additional question from there for Andrea? I don't see anyone, so okay. Thank you, Andrea, for your introduction. And last talk of the session before coffee break and picture and coffee break actually is by Sofia Jeremchuk. Sorry. Who is going to introduce, she's going to introduce a talk entitled Building for Open Science, Ukrainian Case Study.
I must, okay. Sorry. Firstly, I would like to thank you for the possibility to stay here and share our experience, to study from your experience. And so we have a little overtime, and so I try to make my presentation briefly. And also, so a little bit jealous about all your presentation, about your talks, because we are only in the beginning of our way in open science, so like that. What I should underline, so unlike the EU colleagues, unlike all of you, it's important in Ukraine to, if there is no state, to mention that if no state initiative or support some initiatives, yes, about open science in our case, so that organization could implement the idea of open science, but it would be chaotic, unsystemic, and maybe unsuccessful. That is why the governmental document on open science research infrastructure adopted in 2022 become extremely important in our case. After this document, many Ukrainian institutions start to interest in the different project and in the open science, and I just shared this presentation. So for instance, Kyiv Polytechnic University start the initiative of Data Steward in this year after this document and after also Barcelona Declaration presentation in Ukraine. And open the data steward position. In the state level, we have our national, also talking about the open science initiative in open science infrastructure, we have our national CRIS system named URIS, and you can find it in the DRIS. director of CRIS start and this Jurist is an open platform for gathering research information about Ukrainian science. But starting the last year, this CRIS system, but starting from the last year, this CRIS system using for the state evaluation matters, and due to result of the state evaluation, Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine budgeting the university and research infrastructure. Another big project of Ukraine in the sphere of open research infrastructure is Ukrainian Open Citation Index. It's national database, like maybe Corpus, but not such big, with metadata of national research, totally open and free for everyone. And what I should underline with our presentation, and also the example of our experience of National Antarctic Research Center, because this institution started to support open science before it became a mainstream. So Antarctic Research Center put the results of the research to the open data platform, and this data and results are totally open for everyone. And why we are doing here? Because according to the Antarctic Treaty, all research in the Antarctic sphere is a heritage of all human and should be open for everyone. That is why within the state target program on Antarctic research, Ukraine financed the functioning of the database with data sets on different direction of polar research. In this, and also if you have any questions, so I will be open. Also, I leave my email, but the last slide is about why Barcelona Declaration is so important, because it's become some Barcelona Declaration. It's become some umbrella for research institution and for Ukrainian and for all Ukrainian initiative. And I maybe stop here because of our timing, and would be thank you for all of question. In my original presentation, I have some numbers point here.
Yeah. It's the second time today that they disappear, so I don't know why.
I guess this presentation will share with all these points.
Any questions from Sofia? For Sofia? I do have one, actually. You have talked about the Ukraine Open Citation Index. That was an initiative born 6 years ago, if I remember correctly,
right? Yeah. Based on initiative from Crossref, we just created this for check maybe journals, Ukrainian science. It's the first purpose is for the checking for the evaluation from the Ministry of Education and Science, but after that all the Ukrainian scientists start to use it.
And that was exactly one of my questions. So if the usage is still active right now in Ukraine, and if it has been used for assessing research, so for research evaluation in the country? It's
now it's functioning. This UKI, Open Ukrainian Citation, is still functioning. And Ministry, for instance, we have now the reform of evaluation of the journal, research journal, and this system or this database used by the Ministry to evaluate our research journal, and also to evaluate the scientists and even investigate which scientists already migrate because of war or stay in Ukraine.
Questions from the audience? Any other? Yes.
Hi. The question is quite also related to all what was discussed yesterday. Since I remember that at the Paris conference for the Barcelona Declaration, you also had a talk there, if I'm not mistaken, and there was a lot of discussion about what are specific needs of institutions of territories that the community of the Barcelona Declaration can support specific institutions into achieve the commitments and create internal engagement with local stakeholders. So my question would be, are in your context priority have changed during these 6-7 months from the Paris conference, or if not, still what is the main what are the main needs within this context that the community of the Barcelona Declaration can support you to fulfill? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. It's surprising for us. The first priority needs to implement or to support the Barcelona Declaration in Ukraine. It's to just educate the responsible person from the institution, from the research institution, what the benefits from Barcelona Declaration, and what I surprised when we start with Bianca also some webinars in Ukraine, online webinars. So our institution just afraid to pay some fees or some financial obligation under this declaration. So we need just educate the people that it's not about the money. Yeah, it's about the money, yeah, for support such project inside the university. But nevertheless, it's not the obligation to pay some fees to some organization. So it's not a classical. Our institution understands it's like a classical international organization with some membership and fees and so on and so forth. So in Ukraine, we need only more education, more explanation. What is the benefits from this declaration? We can use it.
Any other question? Yes.
Not a question, but just general support. And I also really like this slide. I'm really curious what will be on it when it's shared. I'm sorry we can't see it now. But just as an example of like what it could mean to commit to the Barcelona Declaration, the small steps. I think this is a really nice example also for other people just to see what's possible. So kudos for putting this up here.
Yeah, sure. One is key activities. My point is about the key activities is about exactly its explanation and education of our institution, of our responsible person, even for policymakers, because when we are going to the ministry and explain about the Barcelona Declaration, also our policymakers are afraid to have some obligation under some new international document. So like that. So we need just a work, webinars maybe, I don't know, in this context, about the commitment, and only it's about the support open science initiative, and what we actually do in Ukraine is support the research infrastructure, open research infrastructure as we have. So in the example of Antarctic Center, it's the database of Antarctic database, and as we have in the national level, so it's national CRIS system. So it's like a commitment to just support all these initiatives.
Okay. If there are no more questions, I will thank Sophia again. Thank you. So it is now time of the coffee break before the last section, but first of all, I'm just asking you to go left here because we have to take the picture of the conference out here. So it's just to go there and wait there, and then the photographer will, organize the whole